In the bustling city of New York, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and neon lights painted the streets, a storm was brewing. It wasn't a storm of rain or wind, but one of secrets, power, and rebellion. At the center of it all stood Karoline Leavitt, a woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. She was no ordinary person. She was an investigative journalist, known for her relentless pursuit of truth. Her name carried weight in newsrooms and courtrooms alike, but this time she had bitten off more than she could chew, or so it seemed. Karoline had spent months digging into something big. It started with whispers, rumors floating around like ghosts in the corridors of power. Corporate lobbyists, those shadowy figures who worked behind closed doors, were allegedly manipulating legal decisions. They weren't just influencing judges, they were buying them outright. And Judge Roberts, a man whose stern face often graced television screens during high-profile cases, was at the heart of it all. Karoline didn't have proof yet, but she could feel it in her gut. Something was rotten, and she intended to expose it. Her investigation led her down dark alleys of encrypted emails, confidential documents, and whispered conversations overheard by informants too scared to go public. Every piece of evidence she uncovered pointed back to Judge Roberts. He wasn't just complicit, he was orchestrating the whole operation, but proving it would be another matter entirely. The deeper she dug, the more dangerous things became. Threats arrived in unmarked envelopes slipped under her door. Men in suits began tailing her whenever she left her apartment. Still, Karoline pressed on. Giving up wasn't an option. One day, her efforts paid off. A source, a low-level clerk, working in a corporate office, handed her a USB drive containing explosive information. It detailed how Judge Roberts had accepted bribes from powerful companies in exchange for favorable rulings. There were emails, bank statements, and even audio recordings of meetings where deals were struck. This was the smoking gun Karoline had been searching for. With trembling hands, she plugged the USB into her laptop and began sifting through its contents. Her heart raced as she realized the magnitude of what she held. This wasn't just about Judge Roberts anymore. It implicated dozens of other officials, including politicians and CEOs. The next step was clear. She needed to make this public. But how? Going straight to the media felt risky. If word got out before she could act, the evidence might disappear. Or, worse, she could end up silenced permanently. Then came the idea. A televised hearing was scheduled for later that week, a routine session where Judge Roberts would preside over a minor case. Karoline decided to crash it. She would confront him directly, exposing his crimes live on air. It was bold, reckless, even. But sometimes you had to take risks to bring justice to light. On the morning of the hearing, Karoline dressed carefully, choosing professional attire that screamed authority. She carried a slim folder filled with printed copies of the most damning evidence. As she walked into the courthouse, cameras flashed, capturing her every move. Reporters shouted questions, but she ignored them, focusing instead on what lay ahead. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Lawyers shuffled papers, witnesses fidgeted nervously, and Judge Roberts sat tall behind his bench, radiating confidence. Little did he know, today would not go according to plan. When the proceedings began, Karoline waited patiently for her moment. As expected, Judge Roberts called for order, his voice booming through the room. Then, during a lull in the arguments, she stood up. All eyes turned to her. "Your Honor," she said calmly, though her insides churned with nerves. "I have some information I believe is relevant to this case and to your conduct as a judge." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Judge Roberts' expression hardened. "Ms. Leavitt," he said curtly, "this is highly irregular. Please sit down, unless you wish to be held in contempt." But Karoline didn't sit. Instead, she opened her folder and held up a document. "These are records showing your involvement in illegal activities," she declared, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You've accepted bribes from corporations in exchange for favorable rulings. You've abused your position, and the people deserve to know the truth." For a split second there was silence, then chaos erupted. Spectators gasped, reporters scrambled for their phones, and security guards moved toward Karoline. Judge Roberts slammed his gavel repeatedly, shouting for order. His face had turned red with fury. "That's enough," he bellowed. "Ms. Leavitt, you are fined $50,000 for contempt of court and disrupting these proceedings. If you don't pay immediately, you'll face imprisonment." The fine was astronomical, designed to crush her financially and shut her up once and for all. Most people would have backed down, apologized, and promised never to speak out again, but not Karoline. She smiled faintly, meeting Judge Roberts' glare with unwavering resolve. "Fine me all you want, Your Honor," she said coolly. "But you can't silence the truth forever." As she was escorted out of the courtroom, Karoline couldn't help but feel a flicker of satisfaction. Yes, she'd been fined, but she'd also planted a seed. The world now knew something was wrong, and sooner or later they'd demand answers. What Judge Roberts didn't realize was that Karoline wasn't alone in this fight. Unbeknownst to him, someone else was watching closely, ready to lend a hand. Across town, Alex Carter sat glued to his computer screen, replaying footage of Karoline's confrontation in the courtroom. Alex was a programmer by trade, working for a tech company that specialized in data analysis. He wasn't famous or influential, but he had skills that could tip the scales in Karoline's favor. Watching her stand up to Judge Roberts inspired him. Here was someone willing to risk everything for justice, and he wanted to help. Alex hesitated at first. Getting involved meant putting himself in danger, and he wasn't sure he was ready for that. But the more he thought about it, the angrier he became. How could someone like Judge Roberts get away with such blatant corruption? Determined to do something, Alex crafted an anonymous message to Karoline. "If you're serious about taking him down, I can help," he wrote. "I have access to tools that could uncover even more dirt. Let me know if you're interested." He hit send, then leaned back in his chair, waiting anxiously for a response. Minutes felt like hours as he stared at his inbox. Finally, a reply appeared. "Who are you?" Karoline asked cautiously. Alex explained briefly, emphasizing that he wanted to remain anonymous for now. To his relief, Karoline agreed to meet, albeit reluctantly. They arranged to talk via a secure video call later that evening. When they connected, Alex found himself face-to-face with the woman who had become a symbol of defiance overnight. Despite her calm demeanor, he could see the strain in her eyes. "Look, I don't know you," Karoline began, "but I'm listening. What can you do?" Alex took a deep breath. "I can hack into systems," he said simply. "If there's anything digital linking Judge Roberts to these crimes, I can find it. I've already started poking around, and let's just say there's a lot more where that came from." Karoline nodded slowly, considering his words. She didn't trust easily, not after everything she'd been through, but desperation pushed her to take a chance. "All right," she said finally, "let's work together. But we need to be careful. One wrong move and we're both done for." And so, an unlikely alliance was formed. While Karoline strategized her next move, Alex dove headfirst into cyberspace, unraveling threads of corruption that stretched farther than either of them had imagined. Together, they vowed to bring Judge Roberts to his knees, no matter the cost. The days that followed were a blur of tension and adrenaline for Karoline, Alex, and Ryan. They worked tirelessly from the safety of their new hideout, a dimly lit basement beneath an abandoned restaurant on the outskirts of the city. The space was cramped and smelled faintly of mildew, but it served its purpose. It was off the grid, hidden from prying eyes, and stocked with enough supplies to last them for weeks if needed. Boxes of food, bottled water, and spare clothes were scattered around the room, along with laptops, cables, and stacks of printed documents. Karoline took charge, directing their efforts like a general preparing for battle. She knew they had to stay one step ahead of Judge Roberts and his allies. Every leaked document sent shockwaves through the public, but it also drew closer scrutiny from those in power. The trio monitored news outlets constantly, gauging the reaction to their revelations. Protesters began gathering outside courthouses and government buildings, chanting slogans about justice and accountability. Social media buzzed with outrage as more people demanded answers. But while the public outcry grew louder, so did the danger facing Karoline and her team. Judge Roberts wasn't going down without a fight. In response to the leaks, he issued statements denying all accusations, painting himself as a victim of malicious slander. He even appeared on national television, sitting calmly in a leather chair as he addressed the nation. These baseless claims are nothing more than an attempt to undermine our justice system, he said, his voice steady and authoritative. I assure you I have done nothing wrong. But his words rang hollow to anyone who had seen the evidence. Photos of financial transactions, emails discussing bribes, and surveillance footage of secret meetings had already spread far and wide. Journalists dissected every detail, connecting dots that painted a damning picture of corruption at the highest levels. Still, Judge Roberts clung to his position of power, using his influence to push back against the tide of criticism. Behind closed doors, however, he was panicking. His network of co-conspirators was unraveling, with some of his closest allies distancing themselves publicly to avoid association. Others scrambled to cover their tracks, deleting files and shredding documents. But no matter how hard they tried, the truth kept surfacing. And Judge Roberts knew exactly who was behind it: Karoline Leavitt. Determined to silence her once and for all, Judge Roberts devised a desperate plan. He ordered a massive crackdown on anyone suspected of aiding Karoline, issuing warrants for their arrest under vague charges of conspiracy and cyber-terrorism. Agents fanned out across the city, raiding homes and offices, seizing computers and phones. Some of Karoline's sources vanished overnight, either arrested or forced into hiding. The message was clear: anyone helping her would face severe consequences. Despite the escalating threats, Karoline refused to back down. If anything, she became even more resolute. They can try to scare us, she told Alex and Ryan during one of their late-night strategy sessions. But they can't stop us. Not now. Alex nodded, typing furiously on his laptop. He had been working non-stop to secure their data, encrypting files and distributing copies across multiple decentralized networks. Even if their current location was discovered, the evidence would remain safe. We've got backups everywhere, he assured them. They'll never be able to erase this, Ryan chimed in, adding another layer of protection. Using his connections within the FBI, he managed to intercept intel about upcoming raids and roadblocks. Whenever agents came too close, he warned the group in time for them to relocate or go dark. His inside knowledge proved invaluable, giving them a critical edge over their pursuers. As the stakes rose, so did the intensity of their operation. Karoline decided it was time to escalate their campaign. Instead of releasing information piecemeal, they would hit Judge Roberts with everything they had all at once. The goal was simple: overwhelm him before he could recover. They called it Operation Full Disclosure. To pull it off, they divided responsibilities. Alex focused on finalizing the digital side, ensuring every piece of evidence was ready for release. Ryan coordinated logistics, mapping out escape routes and safe houses in case things went south. Meanwhile, Karoline reached out to trusted journalists and activists, urging them to amplify the story when the time came. This is bigger than any one person, she told them. It's about holding power accountable. Stand with us. Finally, the day arrived. Operation Full Disclosure launched at dawn, timed to coincide with morning news broadcasts. Within minutes, thousands of documents flooded the internet, uploaded to platforms around the world. Encryption keys were shared with select reporters, allowing them to verify the authenticity of the files. Hashtags like Expose Roberts and Justice for All trended globally, dominating headlines and social feeds. The reaction was immediate and explosive. News anchors struggled to keep up as new details emerged every hour. Politicians called for emergency hearings, while citizens took to the streets in protest. Even some of Judge Roberts' former supporters turned against him, calling for investigations into his conduct. For the first time, the full scope of the conspiracy became undeniable. But Judge Roberts still had one card left to play. As the scandal spiraled out of control, he activated a failsafe embedded in the surveillance drone network, a tool designed to monitor and suppress dissent. With a single command, he attempted to delete all incriminating data and frame Karoline for orchestrating a cyber attack on government systems. It was a bold move, meant to discredit her and shift blame onto her shoulders. Unfortunately for him, Alex had anticipated this possibility. Days earlier, he had written a script to detect and neutralize such commands. When the failsafe triggered, Alex's program intercepted it, disabling the protocol before it could cause any damage. "Gotcha," Alex muttered under his breath as lines of code scrolled across his screen. He turned to Karoline and Ryan with a triumphant grin. He just tried to erase everything. Didn't work. Relief washed over the group, but there was no time to celebrate. Judge Roberts' actions only confirmed what they already knew. He was guilty and he was cornered. Now it was time to deliver the final blow. With the evidence preserved and the public demanding answers, Karoline made the decision to confront Judge Roberts directly. She contacted a prominent news station, offering an exclusive interview where she would present irrefutable proof of his crimes. The station agreed, eager to capitalize on the breaking story. Karoline, Alex, and Ryan prepared meticulously for the appearance, rehearsing their arguments and anticipating counterattacks. On the morning of the interview, Karoline dressed carefully, choosing a sharp suit that conveyed authority. She carried a slim briefcase containing copies of the most damning evidence. As she stepped into the studio, cameras flashed, capturing her every move. Reporters shouted questions, but she ignored them, focusing instead on the task ahead. Inside, the brightly lit set, she sat across from the anchor, her expression calm but resolute. When the broadcast began, Karoline wasted no time. She laid out the facts clearly and concisely, presenting document after document that exposed Judge Roberts' corruption. She showed emails detailing bribe payments, bank records tracing money trails, and even audio clips of conversations where deals were struck. Each revelation landed like a bombshell, leaving viewers stunned. By the end of the interview, there was no doubt in anyone's mind. Judge Roberts was guilty. Calls for his resignation erupted instantly, echoing across the country. Protesters gathered outside courthouses, holding signs that read, "Resign now and no more lies." Lawmakers convened emergency sessions, vowing to investigate the allegations thoroughly. For Judge Roberts, the walls were closing in. His attempts to deny responsibility fell flat, drowned out by the sheer weight of the evidence against him. Allies abandoned him, fearing association with his crimes. Even members of his own family distanced themselves, ashamed of his actions. That evening, as Karoline watched the news coverage from their hideout, she felt a mix of triumph and exhaustion. They had achieved what seemed impossible, exposing one of the most powerful figures in the justice system. But she knew the fight wasn't over yet. Corruption ran deep, and rooting it out would take time. "We did good today," Alex said softly, breaking the silence. "But we're not done." "No," Karoline replied, her voice firm. "Not by a long shot." Ryan nodded, staring at the flickering TV screen. "Whatever happens next, we stick together. That's how we win." And with that, the trio prepared for the battle still ahead, united by a shared mission to bring justice to a broken system. Karoline and Alex wasted no time. They knew they were up against powerful forces, and every second counted. After their first meeting, Karoline retreated to a quiet corner of her apartment, poring over the documents Alex had already uncovered. Each file revealed more about Judge Roberts' web of corruption: emails detailing bribes, bank transfers hidden behind shell companies, and even private messages discussing how to cover their tracks. It was overwhelming, but it also fueled Karoline's determination. She couldn't let this go. Meanwhile, Alex worked tirelessly from his tiny studio apartment. His desk was cluttered with monitors, keyboards, and empty coffee cups. He spent hours navigating encrypted servers, cracking firewalls, and piecing together fragments of data that most people wouldn't even know existed. To him, it was like solving a puzzle, one that required precision and patience. As he dug deeper, he discovered something alarming. Judge Roberts wasn't just working alone. There was an entire network of individuals involved, including corporate executives, politicians, and other judges. This wasn't a lone wolf operation. It was a full-blown conspiracy. One evening, as Karoline sifted through the latest batch of evidence Alex had sent her, she noticed something strange. A series of files seemed incomplete, as if parts had been deliberately erased. She called Alex immediately. "Hey," she said, her voice tense. "I think someone's onto us. Some of these documents look tampered with." Alex frowned, leaning closer to his screen. "That's not good," he muttered. "If they've realized we're poking around, they'll tighten security. We need to move faster." He paused, thinking. "Listen, there's a government server I haven't tapped into yet. If I can get in, we might find everything we need, all in one place. But it's risky, really risky." Karoline didn't hesitate. "Do it," she said firmly. "We don't have a choice." The next day, Alex set to work on the government server. It took all his skill and focus, but eventually, he broke through. What he found inside was staggering. The server contained years' worth of classified information, not just about Judge Roberts, but about dozens of others implicated in similar schemes. There were financial records, surveillance logs, and internal memos outlining plans to manipulate public opinion. One document even mentioned a secret program designed to monitor journalists and activists, ensuring they stayed in line. Alex's heart raced as he downloaded everything onto an external drive. This was bigger than they'd imagined. While Alex handled the technical side, Karoline began planning their next move. Simply leaking the information online wouldn't be enough. They needed to make sure the world paid attention. She reached out to trusted contacts in the media, hinting at what she had without revealing too much. "Trust me," she told them. "This will blow your mind. Just be ready when I give the signal." But as they prepared to strike, trouble came knocking. FBI agent Ryan Dawson had been assigned to investigate Karoline following her courtroom outburst. At first glance, Ryan seemed like any other law enforcement officer, stern, by the book, and loyal to the system. But beneath his professional exterior lay a man torn between duty and morality. When he reviewed the case file, something didn't sit right with him. Why was Karoline being treated so harshly? And why did Judge Roberts seem so eager to silence her? Ryan decided to dig a little deeper. He started by reviewing the evidence used to justify the contempt charge. It was flimsy at best, barely holding together under scrutiny. Then he looked into Judge Roberts's background, discovering inconsistencies that raised red flags. The more Ryan learned, the more convinced he became that something was very wrong. He couldn't shake the feeling that Karoline was telling the truth, and that made him uneasy. One night, unable to sleep, Ryan drove to the address listed for Karoline's apartment. He parked across the street, watching as lights flickered in her window. Part of him wanted to knock on her door to ask her directly what she knew, but he held back, unsure of whose side he was really on. Instead, he returned home, wrestling with his conscience. Back at her apartment, Karoline felt the pressure mounting. She hadn't heard from Alex in hours, which worried her. Had something gone wrong? Just as she was about to call him, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from an unknown number. "Meet me tomorrow. Alone. I can help." The message was brief, offering no explanation. Karoline hesitated, debating whether to respond. Whoever it was could be a trap, or exactly what they needed. The next morning, she followed the instructions in the message, arriving at a quiet park on the outskirts of the city. She spotted a man sitting on a bench, dressed in a plain jacket and hat. As she approached, he stood up, revealing himself to be none other than Agent Ryan Dawson. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, sizing each other up. "You're taking quite a risk," Karoline said finally, breaking the silence. "So are you," Ryan replied. "But I think we want the same thing, to expose the truth." Karoline studied him carefully, weighing her options. Could she trust him? Or was this some elaborate setup? Finally, she nodded. "All right," she said. "Tell me what you know." Over the next hour, Ryan shared everything he'd uncovered during his investigation. He admitted that he believed Karoline was innocent and that Judge Roberts was hiding something big. In return, Karoline gave him a glimpse of the evidence she and Alex had gathered. By the end of their conversation, they had formed an uneasy alliance. Ryan agreed to keep their activities off the official radar, providing them with insider information whenever possible. With Ryan now part of the team, things began moving quickly. Alex continued hacking into secure systems, uncovering new pieces of the puzzle. Karoline coordinated with her media contacts, preparing them for the bombshell story they were about to drop. And Ryan kept tabs on the FBI's movements, warning them whenever danger loomed. But Judge Roberts wasn't idle either. He sensed that Karoline was still a threat, and decided to act before she could strike again. Late one night, armed agents stormed her apartment, forcing their way inside. They confiscated her laptop, notebooks, and anything else that might contain evidence. Karoline watched helplessly as they ransacked her home, her mind racing. Luckily, thanks to Alex's foresight, the most critical files had already been backed up and encrypted. Even if they seized her devices, they wouldn't find what they were looking for. When the agents left, Karoline knew she couldn't stay in her apartment any longer. She packed a small bag and headed to the safe house Alex had arranged, a deserted warehouse on the edge of the city. It was cold and drafty, but it would do. Inside, Alex and Ryan were waiting for her, along with stacks of printed documents and several laptops humming with activity. "This is it," Karoline said, addressing the group. "We've got everything we need to take him down. Now it's time to show the world who Judge Roberts really is." Together, they devised a plan. Using social media platforms and encrypted messaging apps, they leaked snippets of evidence to journalists around the globe. Each leak was carefully timed to maximize impact, creating a domino effect of outrage and disbelief. Headlines screamed about corruption in the justice system, while hashtags demanding accountability trended worldwide. Public pressure mounted, forcing lawmakers to take notice. Judge Roberts, realizing the tide was turning against him, grew increasingly desperate. He ordered a raid on the warehouse, hoping to catch Karoline and her allies off guard. But Alex had anticipated this move. He rigged the building with decoy traps and false trails, buying them enough time to escape undetected. As they fled into the night, Karoline couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. They had struck a blow against corruption, exposing the rot at the heart of the system. But the fight was far from over. Judge Roberts still wielded immense power, and he wouldn't go down without a fight. Yet, surrounded by friends who believed in her cause, Karoline knew they could weather whatever storm came next. The days following Karoline's explosive televised interview were chaotic. The nation was in uproar, and Judge Roberts found himself at the center of a firestorm. Protesters filled the streets, demanding accountability. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves from him, while others called for immediate investigations. Despite his attempts to deny the allegations, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Every new report added fuel to the flames, making it clear that his career, and perhaps his freedom, was hanging by a thread. Karoline, Alex, and Ryan knew they couldn't afford to slow down. While the public celebrated their victory, they understood that Judge Roberts still held significant power. He wasn't just going to admit defeat. He would fight back with everything he had left. And so the trio continued working around the clock, preparing for what they believed would be the final confrontation. Their plan was bold: present all the evidence directly to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. If they could get the highest authority in the judicial system on their side, there would be no way for Judge Roberts to wiggle out of responsibility. It was risky, but it was also their best chance to ensure justice prevailed. To execute this plan, they needed to move quickly. Alex worked tirelessly to compile the most damning pieces of evidence into a single presentation. He included intercepted communications, financial records, and even surveillance footage showing clandestine meetings between Judge Roberts and corporate executives. Each piece of evidence was meticulously organized, leaving no room for doubt about his guilt. Meanwhile, Karoline focused on securing a meeting with the Chief Justice. This proved to be more difficult than expected. The Chief Justice rarely granted unscheduled audiences, and getting through layers of security and bureaucracy felt nearly impossible. But Karoline refused to give up. She used every contact she had, pulling strings and making appeals until finally, after days of relentless effort, she secured an appointment. Ryan played a crucial role during this time, keeping tabs on Judge Roberts' movements. Using his FBI connections, he learned that Judge Roberts was planning something big, a last-ditch attempt to save himself. Details were scarce, but Ryan sensed urgency in the way agents were mobilizing. Whatever Judge Roberts had planned, it was coming soon. On the morning of their meeting with the Chief Justice, tension hung heavy in the air. Karoline, Alex, and Ryan gathered in their hideout, reviewing their strategy one final way. "Remember," Karoline said firmly, "we stick to the facts. No speculation, no emotion, just the truth." Alex nodded, clutching a hard drive containing the digital copies of their evidence. "I've triple-checked everything, it's ready." Ryan adjusted his jacket, looking unusually serious. "Let's hope the Chief Justice listens. If not, we're running out of options." With that, they set off for the Supreme Court building. As they approached the massive stone structure, its columns towering above them, Karoline felt a mix of fear and determination. This was it, the moment everything hinged upon. Inside, they were escorted to a private chamber where the Chief Justice awaited them. A stern woman with sharp features and piercing eyes, she greeted them coolly. "Ms. Leavitt," she said, motioning for them to sit. "You've caused quite a stir. Explain yourselves." Karoline took a deep breath and began. She laid out the case methodically, presenting document after document that exposed Judge Roberts' corruption. She explained how he had accepted bribes, manipulated legal outcomes, and abused his position of power. With each revelation, the Chief Justice's expression grew darker, her brows furrowing as she absorbed the magnitude of the betrayal. When Karoline finished, silence filled the room. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the Chief Justice leaned forward, her voice low but commanding. "Do you have proof of all this?" Alex stepped forward, handing over the hard drive. "Everything is here, Your Honor. Irrefutable evidence." The Chief Justice examined the files briefly before nodding. "Very well. I will review this thoroughly. You have my word." As they left the chamber, the trio exchanged cautious glances. They had done all they could. Now it was up to the Chief Justice to decide the next steps. Unbeknownst to them, Judge Roberts was already making his move. Backed into a corner, he devised a desperate scheme to destroy the evidence once and for all. He ordered a team of hackers to infiltrate the systems holding the incriminating data, intending to erase it completely. At the same time, he arranged for false charges to be filed against Karoline, accusing her of orchestrating a cyber attack on government infrastructure. But Alex had anticipated this possibility. Days earlier, he had created redundant backups of the evidence, storing them across multiple decentralized networks. When Judge Roberts' hackers attempted to delete the files, they found themselves locked out, unable to access or alter anything. Frustrated, they reported back to Judge Roberts, who realized his plan had failed. Enraged, Judge Roberts decided to take matters into his own hands. He stormed into the Supreme Court building, demanding an emergency hearing. His face was red with fury as he accused Karoline and her allies of fabricating evidence and committing treason. "This is a witch hunt," he shouted, slamming his fist on the podium. "They are criminals, and I demand justice." The courtroom erupted in chaos. Spectators gasped, reporters scribbled furiously, and judges exchanged uneasy glances. Just as it seemed Judge Roberts might sway opinion in his favor, the Chief Justice entered the room. Her presence silenced everyone instantly. "Enough," she declared, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. She turned to Judge Roberts, her expression unreadable. "Your behavior has been nothing short of disgraceful. The evidence against you is undeniable. You will stand trial for your crimes." Judge Roberts staggered back, his confidence crumbling. "You can't do this," he stammered. "I'm innocent." The Chief Justice ignored him, signaling for security to escort him out. As he was led away, handcuffed and humiliated, the courtroom broke into applause. Reporters rushed to capture the historic moment. while citizens watching at home cheered at the sight of justice being served. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered, chanting slogans of victory. Karoline, Alex, and Ryan stood together, watching, as Judge Roberts was loaded into a police car. For the first time in weeks, they allowed themselves to feel a sense of relief. They had won, or so it seemed. In the weeks that followed Judge Roberts' arrest, life began to settle into a new rhythm for Karoline, Alex, and Ryan. The storm they had unleashed showed no signs of calming down. Protests continued across the country, demanding sweeping reforms, not just in the justice system but in every corner of society. People were angry, not just at Judge Roberts but at the broader culture of corruption and secrecy that had allowed such abuses of power to thrive unchecked. Karoline found herself thrust into the spotlight, her face appearing on magazine covers and television screens nationwide. She was hailed as a hero, a symbol of resistance against systemic injustice. Yet she remained grounded, aware that her fight was far from over. Fame wasn't what drove her. It was the belief that truth could still make a difference. Her days were filled with interviews, speeches, and meetings with lawmakers eager to hear her perspective on reforming the judicial system. She spoke passionately about the need for transparency, accountability, and safeguards to protect whistleblowers like herself. "This isn't about me," she often said during these appearances. "It's about creating a world where no one has to risk everything just to tell the truth." Despite the accolades, Karoline couldn't shake the feeling that there was more work to be done. Every morning she woke up determined to push forward, knowing that exposing Judge Roberts was only the first step. Corruption ran deep, and rooting it out would take years, perhaps even decades, of relentless effort. Alex, too, was navigating uncharted territory. His role in dismantling Judge Roberts' network earned him recognition in tech circles, but he preferred to stay behind the scenes. He turned his attention to developing tools that could empower ordinary citizens to protect their privacy and resist surveillance. One project he worked on was an open-source encryption program designed to shield communications from prying eyes. Another was a decentralized platform where whistleblowers could anonymously share evidence without fear of retaliation. For Alex, this newfound purpose gave his life meaning. Before meeting Karoline, he had been content working quietly in obscurity, tinkering with code and solving puzzles for corporations. Now he saw technology as a weapon, a means to level the playing field between those in power and those fighting back. "If I can help people stand up to bullies like Judge Roberts," he told Karoline one evening, "then all of this will have been worth it." Ryan's journey was more complicated. While his actions had helped bring down Judge Roberts, they also placed him under intense scrutiny within the FBI. Internal investigations questioned his motivations, accusing him of compromising national security by aiding a fugitive. Some colleagues distanced themselves from him while others whispered behind his back. It was isolating, but Ryan refused to apologize for doing what he believed was right. Eventually, Ryan made the difficult decision to resign from the agency. He walked away from the career he had built, choosing instead to dedicate himself to advocating for whistleblower protections. He partnered with organizations that supported activists and journalists, helping them navigate legal challenges while staying safe. Though leaving the FBI felt like losing part of his identity, Ryan knew he had found a new calling, one that aligned with his values. As winter approached, the trio reunited at a small cafe nestled in a quiet corner of the city. They hadn't seen each other much since the fallout from Judge Roberts' trial, each consumed by their respective missions. But today, they carved out time to reflect on everything they had accomplished, and everything that lay ahead. "It feels strange, doesn't it?" Karoline said, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "After months of running, hiding, and fighting, now we're sitting here like nothing happened." "Not exactly nothing," Alex replied with a grin. "We took down one of the most powerful judges in the country. That counts for something." Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, but the system's still broken. Taking out one bad guy doesn't fix everything." "No, it doesn't," Karoline agreed. "But it's a start, and if we keep pushing, maybe others will join us. Maybe we can inspire enough people to create real change." The conversation shifted to their plans for the future. Karoline shared her idea for writing a book, a detailed account of their battle against Judge Roberts, along with lessons learned about holding power accountable. She hoped it would serve as both a guide and a warning for future generations. Alex talked excitedly about expanding his encryption program, envisioning it as a global resource for anyone seeking anonymity online. Ryan mentioned his work drafting, legislation aimed at protecting whistleblowers, hoping to turn personal experience into policy. Their dreams were ambitious, but none of them doubted they could achieve them. Together, they had faced unimaginable challenges and emerged stronger. Now, united by shared purpose, they believed they could tackle whatever came next. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Karoline stood alone on a hill overlooking the city. Lights twinkled in the distance, casting a warm glow over streets bustling with life. She thought about how far she had come, from a lone journalist chasing leads to the leader of a movement that had shaken the foundations of power. It wasn't easy, and the road ahead promised to be just as difficult. But standing there, breathing in the cool night air, she felt hopeful. Change wouldn't happen overnight, and setbacks were inevitable. There would always be people like Judge Roberts, those who exploited their positions for personal gain. But there would also always be people willing to stand up and say, enough. People like her, Alex and Ryan. People who refused to stay silent. Karoline smiled softly, her gaze fixed on the skyline. Somewhere out there, others were rising to meet the challenge. Others were dreaming of a better world. And though the fight was far from over, she knew they weren't alone. With renewed determination, she turned and headed back toward the city. Whatever tomorrow brought, she was ready.